Hello, this is Darren Pearson from darrenscorner.com, and this is part 5 in our video tutorial series on creating a trivia game inside a web browser using JavaScript and Tumult Hype. So to begin part 5, again, go to darrenscorner.com, click on Tutorials, and scroll down to part 5. Now in part 5, we're actually going to import our JavaScript file and start initializing the scene, so this is actual coding. So click on where it says Instructional Files, and there should be a part5.zip that you can download. So I've downloaded that already, and if we open it up, it looks something like this. We've got our background file, triviainfo.js, part5 start.hype, and then two text files, part5 actions, part5 function. So let's take a look at these text files. This is the trivia info file. Now it contains a function called getInfo, and then there's a curly brace that starts here. If we scroll down, there's about 43, 44 lines. Here's the closing curly brace. And I define a bunch of variables here. Now notice in front of all these variables, I put the word window. Window dot, and then number of questions, window dot current slide, window dot current score, window dot title, etc., so on and so forth. Window is one way of, in Tumult Hype, having global variables. Global variables, we're going to have a bunch of functions, and we want to be able to access these variables inside of each function. Usually when we create variables inside a function, they're local, meaning they're valid inside that function, but once the function's done, we can't see them anymore. So let's take a look at a couple of these. They're fairly descriptive, I think. Number of questions, we're going to have 5 questions total. The current slide is 0 and the current score is 0. Well, current score is 0 makes sense. Current slide is 0 is a little bit odd. In one of the things about JavaScript and other programming languages, oftentimes the first thing that you encounter is often called the element 0. So normally human beings count 1, 2, 3, 4, but in many programming languages we start counting 0, 1, 2, 3, things like that. And then down here we have like window.questions equals, notice these are first of all, these are numeric variables. This is what's called a string because it's contained inside quotes, and that's what we're going to put US President Trivia. Now all the ones after this have a bracket, and then we have a string. This is our first question, or maybe better put, our 0th question. The first president of the United States to die while in office was, and then the correct answer is D. And then we're going to show Zachary Taylor, James Polk, John Tyler, William Henry Harrison, and Martin Van Buren for that. And we can see the correct answer is D, William Henry Harrison. And then our response, after we find out if we got it right or wrong, just a little trivia. William Henry Harrison died on April 4th, 1841, after only serving 30 days in office. And then when we go on to the next question, it'll be, John Wilkes Booth shouted the following Latin phrase after shooting President Lincoln. And in vino veritas, e pluribus unum, sic semper tyrannis, that's the one that he shouted, so that's answer C. And it goes on like that. Now again, this is what we call an array. So we have window.questions bracket, and this one is the 0th element of the window.questions array. This is element 1, element 2, element 3, element 4. And what's going to happen the first time we load this page, current slide will be 0, so we'll read window.questions 0, and this will be the correct answer for question 0. And here's what the A value be for 0. And we go through all this, and at the very end, we'll increment this value by 1. So then, when it's 1, we'll read in window.questions 1, which is this string, John Wilkes Booth. And we keep going through, and eventually we'll also check if we increment it, and then finally after we're done, if we increment it and it equals the number of questions, then we're done with the quiz, and we hop on over to the next part. So that's kind of the data that we have here. The nice part about this is if you don't want to do presidential trivia, you change this title and you call it baseball trivia, and maybe you ask 10 questions instead of 5, and then you create this array that's going to have, again, 10 elements, 10 different questions, designate what the correct answers are, and then go through and and get some fake answers and figure out responses and things like that. So it's very easy to customize this. So that's why I kind of wrote it this way. Now we have two other text files here. Part5 function, we're going to come back to in just a little bit, but Part5 actions. We're actually doing this right now. Open the file triviainfo.js. It contains one function called getInfo. Function getInfo has multiple global variables and global arrays. Notice all these things are arrays, window.questions, window.correct answer, answer A through E, and the response. So we take a look at that and we got an idea of what that looks like. Now what we're going to do is we're going to follow these instructions here, and then occasionally I'm going to say copy lines, in this case 7 through 10, from Part5 function into a certain place. So we'll see how that looks. So let's open this up. And if we open up Part5 start, where is it? There it is. This is where we should have been at the end of Part 4. You can see we've got all our animations here inside the main section going back and forth, so that's good. I'm going to expand the resources tab right there. And you can see the only resource, the only other external file we brought in is background1.png. I'm going to click down here and hit the plus sign and say add file. And it's going to say what file do I want to add. I go to my desktop, Part5, and it's the triviainfo.js. So I can import, this is an external JavaScript function definition. So I bring that in, and there it is. So it knows about this file. Then all I have to do is kind of invoke it when the game loads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first navigate to the splash page and resize my window just a bit so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. And in the inspector, notice I closed the resources tab just to get a little more space. What I want to do is go to the scene tab, and we have on scene load. So that means when this page initially loads, we can have a bunch of actions. We're going to click right there and say on scene load, and actually I'm going to say run JavaScript. And what function do I want? I have either none or new function. So I'm going to click new function, and I get this tab that pops up. So here's kind of my graphic representation. Here's my JavaScript. Now, Tumult Hype automatically calls it untitled function. I can't change these two lines that I have my opening curly brace and my closing curly brace. I can't change much here except the title. And I'm going to call this initialize splash. And then click inside here. So let me see, just right there in the new tab, replace untitled function with initialize splash. Copy lines 7 through 10 from Part5 function into this lines between the curly braces, save it, and view the results in a browser. Well, let's take a look at that. Part5 function, again, I'm using text wrangler, so they put line numbers there. This is initialize splash. And I put in some comments, start copy here, end copy here. I'm going to grab lines 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I'll just say edit copy. And I go into my Hype document and I say edit paste and stick that in right there. And if we look closely at that, that font's kind of small, so I think I'll use text wrangler. What I'm going to do is when that page loads, I'm first going to run the function called getInfo. That's the function contained in that .js file we read in, and that will initialize all of those variables. Then I'm going to go into my Hype document and find the thing called title1. And again, that has a unique ID, and change the inner HTML to window.title. Window.title, if you remember, is, in this case, US President Trivia. Then I have two alerts. These are things I'll eventually take out, but they're kind of nice for debugging. I'm just going to say there are, and then I'll echo back how many number of questions in this example. So that should say there are 5, but I'm echoing back that variable. And then I'm going to say the first question will be, and then I say window.questions bracket 0. So actually, again, as a human being, I'd say it's first, but I actually have to read in element 0. So that's just something you have to get used to with arrays in JavaScript. So I put that in, and I'm going to say File Save, and I'm going to preview this and watch what happens. Okay, there are 5 questions in this example. Okay. The first question will be, the first President of the United States to die while in office was. So I've read those variables in, and notice this also now says, instead of trivia title goes here, it says US President Trivia. That was changed right with this line. So what this line said is, go in the Hype document, find the element with the unique ID title 1, and set his inner HTML equal to this variable, which is the string US President Trivia. So get element by ID, is something we're going to be using a lot inside here. So get element by ID, and the order is important. You'd think you'd be able to put window.title on this side and put this on the other side if this was regular algebra, but it's not. This equals sign is actually an assignment statement. So we're doing good. Verify the following. The inner HTML of title 1 now reads US President Trivia. Yep. An alert shows that there are 5 questions. Yep. A second alert shows up displaying the first question. And D, the start button jumps to the main scene and the timeline begins to move at 3 seconds. Yep, so we got all that. Now we're going to go into the main scene, and on scene load we're going to put a different function in there called initialize main. So let's take a look. Here's the main scene, and when every time this loads, we're going to read in or execute this function. So I go to inspector scene, on scene load, run JavaScript, and I have none, new function, or initialize splash. I don't want to do initialize splash, I want to do new function. And I'm going to change it from untitled function to initialize main. And between the curly braces, I'm going to copy lines 22 to 41. So again, if I go down, here's function initialize main, start copy here. I'll start right there. I've got a couple alerts, and I'll go down right to there and copy it. Make sure you don't copy this curly brace, or your syntax will get goofed up. So that looks good. I do a file save, and let's take a look at what this code is doing. Well, I've got when this page loads, it's going to say the current slide is set to this global variable window.currentSlide, should be 0. And the score is set to window.currentScore. Okay, that makes sense. I create a variable here called window.answerClicked equals false. Every time this page loads, I set this variable to false, and then when we click one of the answers, we set it to true, and this will prevent people from clicking multiple times. It'll be a little bit how the game plays. We'll talk about maybe changing this. These 2 lines represent changes here. Right now we have the inner HTML. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. There we go. Question XX of YY and score colon 000000. What this will do is I'm going to find the thing called info display and change his inner HTML to read this. Question window.currentSlide plus 1 of window.number of questions. So this should be something like question 1 of 5 when we evaluate those variables and put that in there. The score the inner HTML of score display will be SCORE colon space, and then whatever window.currentScore is, which is 0. So again, get element by ID, really powerful. The thing that's super important is info display. Notice the D is capitalized in display. And if I go and check, this thing right there is called info display, and it's typed the same way. So I have to make sure all those things are correct. Let's go through the rest of this code. Here I take the question display and then answer A display through answer E display and set the inner HTML equal to window.questions bracket window.currentSlide. Again, window.currentSlide should be 0 the first time we do this. And then so we could think of this as window.answerA bracket 0. And we can see all that. Eventually we increment that when we go on to the next question. And I also, just to make sure this works in all browsers, I'm going to force all the displays to be visible. Eventually I'm going to hide them because with these trivia games, as time goes on, you take away certain answers. So we're going to toggle the visibility of answer A display through answer E display from visible to hidden. But we'll be doing that in a different step. So let's go back to our hype document here. Oops. First of all, text wrangler. Here's our actions. So we're going to do this. Oh, we did that already. Yep, there it is. Initialize main. That's all sitting in there. I do a file save, and we test it out. And we need to verify that the inner HTML of info display reads question 1 of 5. It reads score 0. We see the question display asks who's the first president to die in office. We see 5 possible answers, and the timeline starts moving. So, file save, preview. There's our 2 alerts from initialize splash. Now, the current slide is set to 0, okay. The current score is set to 0, okay. And it takes a while to hit those alerts, so the timeline actually started, but we can see the first president of the United States to die while in office was, and it filled in answer A, answer B, answer C, answer D, answer E. So everything's working the way we want it. So this is good. Notice if I click on these, nothing happens yet. We'll go about fixing that in the next couple steps. So thank you very much, and time to move on to part 6.